Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is Monday, March 29th, 2 p.m. in conference room 325. First on the agenda, we have HCR 8, HD1, and HR 9, HD1. Members, we have a number of people submitting testimony in support, but we have no one here to testify in person. So we will be moving on. Looks like our robot overlords are allowing us to continue. Department of Health and Support.
Hi, Vice Chair. My name is Matthew Shim from the Department of Health. Apologize for the late testimony. Department stands on its testimony and support. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next up, we have Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women in Support.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chairs and members, Lainey Transfer Card, Jabola Curlis. The Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women stands on written testimony and support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, that's all the testifiers we have. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 12 HD1, HR 13 HD1, convening a task force to address implementation of Hawaii's state law corollary to Title IX to strengthen Hawaii's efforts to end campus-based sexual violence and gender discrimination. First up, we have the Department of Education in support.
Sorry. Aloha, this is Beth Shamal-Fenig from the Department of Education, testifying in behalf of Dr. Christina Kishimoto. We stand on our written testimony in support.
Okay, thank you. Next up is AAUW of Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Young-Hee Overly, and I'm representing AAUW as well as Hawaii Women's Coalition today. We stand on our written testimony in support, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Every Voice Coalition in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair and honorable members of the Senate, the committee, the House Committee, sorry. My name is Nora Gallo. I am co-executive director of the Every Voice Coalition, and I am here to testify in support. I do sit on my testimony and I'm available for question. However, I would just like to mention the statistics and numbers that I have written in my testimony showing from a recent campus climate survey at U of H in 2019, that 60% of students experienced that sexual violence at the university was problematic. And that roughly around 50,000 students are currently enrolled on UH campuses. From those statistics surveys, that shows that 6,347 students were impacted by sexual harassment. 21.3% of students experienced domestic violence, meaning that 10,645 students were impacted by domestic violence. 7.2% of students reported experiencing domestic violence, and therefore 3,598 students were impacted. And so just wanting to sort of mention that, there's a lot of students that are experiencing from sexual harassment, sexual assault, and domestic violence on the campus. And because of the current state of Title IX, knowing that we will likely not have a new final rule from the Biden administration for the next 2 to 4 years, it is vitally important that we find ways that we can support students and survivors on campuses that is external to an investigatory process. Roughly only 10% of survivors come forward to report through official channels, and we need to be able to address resources that are readily available for student survivors. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder to the testifiers that we do have a 2-minute limit on testimony. Next up, we have the LGBT caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. This is for HR 13 HD1. Not on? Okay. I guess we do not have them. That's all the testifiers. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 35, HR 28, strongly urging the United States military to clean up munitions and explosives of concern in Hawaii under the Military Munitions Response Program. That's who? Members, we have a number of testifiers in support, or testimonies in support, but no testifiers that are going to be present today. So we will move on. So a little bit of confusion here. We had some late testimony from Ed Sniffen from DOT, who should be on Zoom for this. Sorry, going back to the HCR 38 or 37 HR 30. Mr. Sniffen, are you there?
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair members. Lena Rocky-Regan from the State Department of Transportation here on behalf of Deputy Director Sniffen. DOT stands on its written testimony and support. As reflected in our testimony, we request that the date to submit the joint report be revised to 2023 to provide us time needed to do additional work in preparation for that deadline. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 66, reviewing and approving the action taken by the Board of Land and Natural Resources on a land exchange between the state of Hawaii and Parker Ranch. First up, we have DLNR in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Chair, Committee members. Kevin Moore with the DLNR Land Division. The department stands on its written testimony and support, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have. Oh, nope, that's it. Members, any questions? Sorry, some of these resolutions are paired and some aren't. Makes it a little confusing. Okay, we're moving on to HCR 69 HD1, HR 58 HD1, requesting the Department of Land and Natural Resources to submit a petition to list the pueo as a threatened or endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. First up, we have DLNR with comments.
Aloha, Vice Chair and Chair members of the committee. This is Afshin Siddiqui representing the DLNR, and we stand behind our testimony to support the measures.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the University of Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I'm Nick Cummelford with the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. We strongly support this resolution, but we do note that the data needed for evaluation of its threats to existence and population status is probably lacking at this time, and that will affect the opportunity for a decision. However, we feel that this will also bring it to the forefront and be useful today, but also for future kinds of applications. We stand on our testimony and support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Kawai Hapai Ohana in support.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair,
Sorry, we can barely hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair. How about now?
A little better, but still pretty soft.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, that's a little better. Yep, go ahead.
All right. Well, my name is Thomas Shirai. I'm testifying both as head of the Kauai Hapai Ohana and myself. I'm sending in testimony of strong support for this, and it is part of our kuleana to Malama or Ohana, which is the pueo. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? If not, I've got one for Dean Comerford. Are you still there?
Yes, Chair.
So you said that you needed more data for this to be effective. Do you think that would you recommend that this resolution be introduced at a later time to be more effective? Do you have the tools now to make this appeal to the Endangered Species Act, to add this to the Endangered Species Act?
Chair, we feel that the data is not complete in terms of Fish and Wildlife making a positive recommendation at this time. There's quite a bit of work going on both with the college and with DLNR. Much of it is in collaboration with each other. However, we do feel that if a application was put in, the advantage is it would bring it to the forefront, because this is not really a species that's well known in terms of its potential for the endangered species list. So we think anything that brings this to the forefront would be useful.
Okay, so just to be clear, even though it probably doesn't have a chance right now because the data is insufficient to put it on the endangered species list, you still think that the resolution would be beneficial in the attention it would bring to the pueo?
Yes, Chair, we believe that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, members, any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll move on to HCR 95, HR 80. Urging Hawaii helicopter companies to avoid conducting non-emergency flights over residential neighborhoods. First up, we have the Kauai Hapai Ohana in support. Thomas, you still there?
Okay, Chair, we stand on our testimony.
Okay, sounds good. And you're the only one. So any members, any questions? I will note that we have other testifiers writing in support, just no one here to testify. Okay, thank you. Members will be moving on to HCR 96, urging the Department of Facility Maintenance of the City and County of Honolulu, in conjunction with the United States Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environmental Services of the City and County of Honolulu, to immediately and regularly clean the drainage canals and streams in Kaneohe and Kailua, and develop recommended cleaning schedules for drainage canals and streams. Members, we have a number of individuals writing in support of this resolution, but no one here to testify. So we'll move on to HCR 112, HR 90, declaring racism as a public health crisis. First up, we have the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Lady Trin for Cardivola-Crollis. The Commission on the Status of Women stands a written testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support. Okay, not present. Next up, we have Community Alliance on Prisons in support.
Aloha, Chair. Kat Brady testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons in strong support of this memo that actually declares racism as a public health crisis, which we definitely agree on, and recognizes the importance of educational programs and we really like this one, adopt a Hawaii-based, culturally based health justice framework that will further combat the continuation of racism with policymaking and promoting racial equity. You know, that's a huge task, and we understand that because the system is dependent upon structural racism. And Hawaii has proven itself to be kind of an outlier as other places are abandoning punitive and unsustainable sentences. We're continuing to promote enhanced sentencing, mandatory minimums, building new human cages. None of this actually promotes justice. We are incarcerating people who are, you know, the first people of this land, many of whom are houseless, and 50% of the houseless on Oahu are Native Hawaiian. So what are we doing? I am really grateful that the legislature is taking on racial justice, and please, please understand that the first people of our land are the people who have been treated so unjustly. So please pass this reso. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next up, we have ACLU of Hawaii in support. President, members, we have a number of individuals all in support. We have two here today. Tarina Fa'agao in support. Are you here? Not here, not present. Tardive Freitas, are you here?
Aloha, Vice Chair Matayoshi. Aloha, Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. Aloha e ku'ulahui o keia aina nei. My name is Tardive Freitas and I submit testimony in strong support. Today I speak before you as a mother, daughter, wife, and kanaka maoli with my ohanas mo'oku'ohau going back to this aina. I stand on my testimony and would also like to share a personal story while also reminding us the true meaning of aloha.
Hello? Yes?
Yes.
Could everyone mute their microphones if they're not testifying, please?
Growing up in Nanakuli, I was brought up knowing that I could attain whatever I set out for myself. But yet I am here today speaking from my personal experience and having witnessed the very racism that this resolution aims to dismantle and eliminate. Having been fortunate to be the first in my family to earn a college degree and then go on to law school, only to learn that, hey, these laws are actually pretty good for Native Hawaiians, which begs the question, how is it that the very laws this body creates or has created that mandates funding for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, provides for the protection of water as a public trust resource, but yet there continues to be lawsuit after lawsuit to further affirm these laws? On top of that, it is a result of how racism operationalizes that Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders are experiencing the poorest health outcomes. Native Hawaiians are dying, and that is a fact, not an exaggeration or sensationalization. If this makes you feel uncomfortable, it should. We must do better. My life depends on it. While racism has existed in Hawaii for many generations, we continue to hear notions around living aloha or embodying the aloha spirit. Let us not forget that the true meaning of aloha is what this resolution seeks to achieve. All of the best qualities and neighbors caring for neighbors that we've likely all witnessed and have had benefited from, regardless of race, gender identity, sexual orientation, or disability. Sometimes aloha is warm and embracing, and sometimes aloha also means taking a hard look at ourselves in the mirror and realizing we have work to do. We need to do better. In closing, I'm here before you today with hope and urgency, knowing that for my keiki, ka vena ula o ka lani, ka waiola, ka aina aloha, ka la hikiola, and while I'm literally carrying the next generation, I urge this committee to pass this resolution so that our keiki and future generations will not have to carry these burdens and know the true meaning of aloha. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you. Members, that's all the testifiers we have today. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 129, HR 111, convening a working group to discuss the future development plans in Kakaako Makai. First up, we have Friends of Kiwalos in support.
Good afternoon. This is good afternoon. This is Ron Iwami of Friends of Kiwalos. Good afternoon,
Go ahead.
Chair Nakashima and Vice Chair Matayoshi and members. I sent in written testimony, but I wanted to highlight two things. One is that for 16 years, we've been protecting this land, and it started from 2006 when we're opposing the A and B plan, and the result of that was the residential ban came to be. And so it's been like 4 times we had to protect this land from A and B, and then now OHA got transferred the land in 2012, and they tried 3 times to change it. And I just wanted you guys to be aware of the fact that there's been very controversial for these 16 years. So I feel that this resolution will bring everybody to the table and hopefully come to a solution so we don't have to go through this year after year. And another second point is there is in existence a Kakaako Makai conceptual master plan that pretty much maps out what the public wants on that land. It was developed in the course of 5 years and with extensive public input. And ACD adopted it officially in 2011 as the go-to plan for any future development of the land. Up to this time, OHA has ignored that plan. And that plan, by the way, does not include any residential. So I just want to make it clear to you folks that that plan is in existence. And I think with this working group convened, that should be an important discussion point. That is all, and thank you very much for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha, and thank you very much.
Next up, we have Adrian Kamali'i in opposition. Okay, not present. Next up, we have Thomas Shirai in support.
Yes, Chair, I stand on my testimony and support this. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And on HR 111, we have Office of Hawaiian Affairs in opposition.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi, as well as Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. I'm Sylvia Hussey, the CEO of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and we stand on our written testimony of strongly opposing this measure and similar measures, and just wanted to go on record with 3 summarizing points as the basis for our strong opposition. First, it is an intrusion by the legislature on the Board of Trustees' absolute responsibility and authority to steward and be accountable to the trust responsibility of public land trust. And that's what these lands represent. They represent the payment of public land trust funds to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as a fiduciary responsibility. Second, as a major point, it is not public lands, it is trust lands. And therefore the responsibility of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to steward those lands in accordance to their mission. And third and finally, we just wanted to express that if this resolution should go through, OHA will not be participating in the working group and any discussion about land exchanges, as that would set back our positions as the settlement was intended to accomplish in the first place. And so for these reasons, we ask that the committee hold this resolution and these forward actions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have. Members, any questions? Go forward.
The Friends of Kiwalo?
He said Friends of Kiwalo.
Is it Mr. Iwa?
Yep.
Friends of Kiwalo. Are you there, sir? Can you hear me? Friends of Kiwalos. I don't see or hear you. Or anyone who can answer this question. What is the consensus within the community that seems to have been united on this issue? That the,
Yeah.
oh, you're there. Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mr.
This is Ron Iwami, Friends of Kiwalos.
Okay, good. You're the exact person I wanted to ask the question to. Is there a consensus within the community or your group or within the group and the community for the height limitation? Obviously, it's not 400. Is there another agreeable number other than 400?
Well, we would like to stay to the existing height limit of 200 feet on the majority of the parcels and 65 feet and 45 feet on others. Yeah, close to the shore. So we'd like to stand by those height limits.
You said 65 up to a height of how far?
Well, 65 feet is the ones along the Kewalo shoreline. Kewalo channel on the ever side of the channel, because that's right on the water. And then 45 feet is the one by Next Step Shelter, right on the water too. That's 45. And the rest is 200 feet because they're more inland. And we'd like to stand by that 200 feet height limit.
Thank you, sir. Chair, I have a question of OHA.
Any other members first? Go ahead, Report.
For OHA, being that I was in the legislature when we voted for that piece of property, was the valuation of the 200 million based upon the height of 200, 300, or 400 feet? Did that get into some of the minutes or floor speeches? I don't recall, except I did recall that many of us wanted to do 400 feet at the time, except some members of OHA said, hey, we don't want to be greedy, let's do one step at a time. Could you refresh some of the memory of the amounts and evaluation at that time?
My understanding, Representative, is that the state's appraiser in the work that was done, assumptions were there that assumed a height limit of 400 feet, intimating residential uses there. I don't know, we have the final committee report, and so we can provide that, but as it relates, those assumptions were there as part of the settlement, and therefore part of the implied value of the state's appraiser then put that dollar amount at 198 million. So implicit in that trade and value is that entitlement of that use of residential in there.
And you have that evaluation in writing, correct?
We do.
Could I request you send that to the chair?
Absolutely.
That would be very helpful. Very good. Thank you very much, OHA.
Sure.
Okay, members, any other questions? If not, we'll move on to HCR 131 HD1, requesting the establishment of a burial sites working group to review and recommend improvements to the burial sites program within the State Historic Preservation Division. First up, we have DLNR with comments.
Aloha Winala, Vice Chair and members of your committee. My name is Sinana Rodriguez, and I am the History and Culture Branch Chief at the State Historic Preservation Office. We stand by our written testimony, which is that we acknowledge the intent of the resolution as well as we provided comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have OHA in support.
Aloha Chair Nakashima, members of the committee. My name is Kamakana Ferreira. I'm the lead compliance specialist with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. OHA stands on a written testimony in support with amendments, but I'd like to clarify that should Hui na Ola Ni'iwi not, sorry, I messed that up. Should they not be able to convene the working group, that further discussion would need to take place on that, and that OHA is open to discussions on administering the program within OHA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have, oh boy, I'm gonna butcher some of these names. Sorry in advance. Next up, we have Huli Auapa'a in support.
Aloha Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kipo Akili'ipa'akawa, speaking on behalf of our Executive Director, Kelly Uyoka at Huli Auapa'a, our nonprofit organization. We stand on a written testimony in strong support with amendments for this bill, HCR 131. We look forward to seeing this as a great opportunity to work collaboratively with Shipti, between the Native Hawaiian community, descendants, and organizations like ourselves to really find better ways to malama or ibi kupuna, really care for our ancestors. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Aha Moku o Maui Inc. Incorporated in support. Okay, Amoku Kapu, are you there? There we go. If you're talking, we cannot hear you. His bandwidth is low. Is that is that why we cannot hear him?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Kapu, your bandwidth is low, it's saying, so we cannot hear you. I'm going to try to come back to you in a little bit. Okay, members, we have a number of individuals, all in support, one with comments. First up, we have Edward Ayao in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima and Vice Chair Matayoshi. I stand on my testimony in support of the following amendments to HCR 131 HD1. First, in terms of the composition of the working group, I urge that this resolution mirror HCR 206 SR 171 and include 2 representatives from large landowners and developers to reflect Chapter 60's recognition of the 2 types of members of the Island Burial Council. That includes regional representatives of the Hawaiian community as well as large landowners and developers. Second, to include a representative of Kuliawa Pa'akai Collective. Third, to include a representative of the William S. Richardson School of Law, as this representative would bring considerable legal expertise to the working group on historic preservation laws. Fourth, I urge this resolution identify the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as the entity to establish, manage, and support the work of the Burial Sites Working Group, to hold hearings to obtain sworn testimony of interested witnesses, to properly identify the scope of the need for improvements in the management of the Island Burial Councils, and implementation of HRS Chapter 60 and HAR Chapter 13300, so that a bona fide administrative record can be established of the working group's proceedings. And fifth, I urge that the committee adds the language on page 4 of this resolution, quote, "Be it further resolved that the working group examine, consider, and develop any other recommendations for improvement of the management of the Island Burial Councils for consideration by the legislature in its regular session of 2022, unquote. All for your consideration of our desire to uplift Hawaiian efforts to protect our ancestors' final resting places as part of the ongoing kuleana to our Hawaiian humanity. Ola naivi. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mana Kalelani Karkas. Okay, not present. Let's go back to Keamoku Kapu. Let's see if your mic works now. Sorry, we still cannot hear you. Okay, looks like we're just having technical difficulties again. We'll try to come back to you again if you can hear us. Hopefully we'll resolve that before this measure is over. Kipo'o Keli'i Pa'akaoa, are you there?
Hello, Vice Chair, Chair, committee members of the committee. I'm testifying as myself, Kipo'o Keli'i Pa'akaoa, in my own individual capacity. On that note, I just wanted to note that I think the fact that I'm here testifying on behalf of our organization as well as an individual is testament to kind of measures that a lot of us as descendants need to take to really the extent that we need to go to protect our iwi kupuna, because just so much help is needed there. Testifying strong support of this bill with amendments for consistency with SCR 206. Again, look forward to this as a way to collaborate with SHPE and the Burial Sites program It seems that there is a lot that can be done to really help to improve the capacity, despite admirable efforts of individuals within these organizations. Yeah, with that, mahalo for your time. Hola naivi, mahalo kako.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jennifer Noelani Ahia.
Aloha mai kako, Chair Nakashima and committee members. My name is Noelani Ahia, and I am a descendant of iwi kupuna that are kanu buried in the Pu'oni Sand Dune Complex in central Maui. And I stand on my written testimony that I sent in with amendments. As some of the other testifiers have said before, we do need to have OHA and the Burial Council involved with choosing cultural practitioners, possibly from Hula Ola Na'iwi, who are practitioners of Malama Iwi and also Kanaka Maoli. I come here to you today to speak on behalf of my kupuna who have been desecrated for decades because of the failure of SHPD to follow the statutes and do things like require an adequate AIS for projects. When they don't require an adequate AIS, it leads to iwi kupuna being desecrated, oftentimes moved, and oftentimes built over. And this is unacceptable for us as Kanaka Maoli. This is the continuation of cultural genocide, and it is hurting our people. I've attached a letter for you from the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination at the United Nations. That committee is something that the United States is a treaty partner in, and has a duty to follow their standards and follow their requests for remedy. And they have written back to our group Malama Kakanilua specifically about the Pu'uoni Sand Dune Complex, seeking investigation and remedy by the state of Hawaii. And so this bill 131 could go a long way towards creating remedy if there's a meaningful solution that comes out of the report that the working group could potentially put together. As far as phase 6 in Maui-Lani, I'm in the middle of a lawsuit for that. And again, it's because of an inadequate AIS. And in our preliminary injunction, SHPD admitted that they did not follow procedure. They claimed that it was due to understaffing, and then they testified that they were fully staffed in that department. And so, you know, in my testimony, I listed a lot of different examples. There's many, many more. We have Lahaina, what happened in Kaua'ula in the fall, where 5 grandmothers got arrested. Our people have to put our bodies on the line to protect our burials because SHPD is not doing their due diligence and not following their own laws. And it puts our people at risk because we have a kuleana to protect our iwi kupuna. It's a sacred trust. So I've included those in my written testimony. We also have...
Conclude your testimony.
Absolutely. This working group is crucial to finding remedy for the issues that exist at SHPD. This is not personal against anyone at SHPD, but there is a structural, institutional, foundational problem with the way that SHPD functions, and we can all do better to protect our iwi kupuna for our future generations. E malama ina iwi kupuna. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dane Maxwell. Not present. Adrian Kamali'i. Not present. Claire Apana. Not present. Okay, Thomas, I know you're here.
I'm
Thomas.
here.
Oh,
I'm here.
sorry, Claire. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. Claire Apana from Wailuku, Maui. And I just want to say that I'm here out of necessity before you as a board, as representatives of the government of the Hawaii state. And I believe you're under oath to uphold the laws of the Hawaii Constitution and the United States government. Both of these bodies are failing the Hawaiian people miserably in protecting their most treasured and sacred kupuna. You are failing miserably, and something needs to be done. I have been in 2 contested cases this year, and it's been for the last 2 years, just because SHPD does not protect our iwi kupuna. They do not even follow the laws of 6E. They do not even make sure that archaeologists are following these laws. And they have the gall to say that they are protecting them. I will give you an example. In the last contested case that I'm in, it is for an archaeological company's permit. This archaeological company was found by a judge's order to have moved 50 iwi kupuna, 50 iwi with no permission from the state. That is a violation of 6E. They were found to have not followed their monitoring plan in a court case in Second Circuit Court. Alan Downer testified that they have no record of this company ever having any violation and that they were in total compliance. After our contested case closed in October of 2020, I went and did more research and found a document that showed that Alan Downer had actually given them a violation in 2018 for 35 unfinished
Claire, that's been 2 minutes. Could you please conclude your testimony?
Yes, I will right now. And so what the Board of Land and Natural Resources did was disallowed any of our arguments so that his testimony, his record would not be put into the report. What I'm saying is there is something greatly wrong with this system. And I would like to see that the neighbor islands who have the most effect with burials being desecrated have at least equal to higher representation. And that if you're going to put large landowners on, let them be large landowners representing Kanaka large landowners. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Keamoku, Mr. Kapu, let's give you one more try, and then we'll come back to you at the end if necessary. Still not able to hear you. Maybe check if your microphone is enabled. You might have to hit a function and another one of the F keys. While we wait for him, we'll give him one more try after the next two testifiers. Let's move on to Thomas Shirai.
Yes, Chair. My name is Thomas Shirai, and I did serve on 2 terms for the Oahu Island Burial Council representing Wailomoku, and I'm also a recognized lineal descendant by Shippi. I am in support of this legislation. There needs to be a lot of things overhauled so that we can improve to better Malama or Iwi Kupuna. So that's all. There's too many things for me to say. So I just keep it at that and say that we need this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Next up, we have Kolea Fukumitsu in support.
Too many things.
Okay, not present. We'll give Mr. Kapu one more chance. We do have your written testimony as well.
Too many.
It does not look like we can hear you still. I'm sorry. And it says your network bandwidth is low, so that might be a reason. Sorry, Mr. Kapu. Members, any questions? Yep, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 132, HD1, HR 112, HD1, requesting the Department of Health to submit a request to the Drug Enforcement Administration for an exemption to regulations and a petition to initiate proceedings for federal rulemaking to clarify that the state authorized use of medical cannabis does not violate the Federal Controlled Substances Act. First up, we have the Department of Health with comments.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Masayoshi, and members of the committee.
We're not able to hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you very, very softly.
Maybe I can try.
Is that better?
Yep, better.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Whitney with the Department of Health Medical Cannabis Registry Program, and the department wishes to stand on our written testimony offering comments, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Akamai Cannabis Clinic in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for being willing to hear this very important measure. I stand on my written testimony in strong support, which primarily contains some suggestions for edits for clarity and consistency, and I hope also answers any concerns that were previously raised about this measure. Thank you for considering my testimony, and I will be available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Big Island Grown Dispensaries in support.
Yes, thank you so much, Jacqueline Moore with Big Island Grown. We see this as a huge step forward, and we are in strong support. Thank you so much for scheduling to hear this resolution. Aloha.
Yeah, thank you, members. We have a number of individuals submitting testimony all in support. The only one here today will be Kai Luke in support. Not present. I guess we have no one in support. Members, any questions?
Sure.
Yeah, Rep Ward.
I have a chair for Dr. Otto, as I usually do. Dr. Otto, this is...
Dr. Otto, you're on mute.
I'm on mute.
Yes, Representative Ward.
Dr. Otto, but Dr. Otto, you're...
Good afternoon.
The question is, according to the title, this is only regarding cannabis for medical purposes. But if you look at line 24 to 27 on the second page, it kind of says, and by the way, have them write a letter to make all of the use of cannabis outside of the schedule of forbidden drugs. That seems to be contradictory. Or do you read it in such a way or not? Look at line 24.
Well, so I would say that what this resolution is addressing is the fact that authorized use of cannabis in Hawaii violating federal law because it's a constitutional authority reserved to the states and cannot be preempted by a federal rule that is namely the Schedule 1 list. So the broader category here is the state's authority under the Constitution to decide how controlled substances are used within the state. And in this instance, the state decided 21 years ago to authorize cannabis for medical purposes within the state. The state could certainly broaden that use, that authorization at some point. That's not what I'm suggesting. As you know, I am a proponent for legitimate medical use. But I think the more accurate way to describe this is recognizing that state authorized use of a controlled substance does not violate federal law.
Okay, so the language on lines 24 to 27 does not bring in or allow recreational marijuana.
No, the authorized use of cannabis within the state is completely up to the state. So if the state sticks with strictly medical use as it currently is, then this would not pertain to recreational use. This only pertains to uses that have been authorized by the state.
Okay, if that's the case, terrific. Thank you, Dr. Otto.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 135, HR 115, recognizing Mekia Kealakai's birthday of October 15th as Royal Hawaiian Troubadours Day. Members, we have one testifier in support, Thomas Shirai.
Yes, Chair. I support this resolution for Mekia Kealakai. He's one of our great Hawaiian treasures, composer and musician. And for one of your colleagues, Representative Gene Ward, he wrote a song about the area you represent geographically. It's called Waioli. It's performed by Gabby and many Hawaiian musicians. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Rep Board's going to want a copy of that song later.
No,
Moving on to.
I want to sing, Chair, I want to sing it.
Oh, we'll save that for
I think
DM.
we'll pass it. Yeah, that.
Okay, we'll move on to HCR 163 HD1, HR 139 HD1, requesting the Board of Land and Natural Resources to enter into a long-term water lease with the Waioli Valley Taro Hui for the Hui's existing use of water from Waioli Stream via direct negotiation upon completion of the requirements of Chapter 343 Hawaii Revised Statutes. First up, we have DLNR in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ian Hirokawa with DLNR Land Division. I will stand on our written testimony in support of the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have OHA in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee, Leitani Peltier on behalf of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, testifying in support of HCR 163, HR 139. Several years ago, I had the privilege of working directly with these farmers as their hui was starting to formally come together. So I've seen firsthand how hard they've worked, and I know how far they've come. They are truly an inspiration, and their story reflects their resilience, their strong love of their aina, and their commitment to passing on their knowledge and traditions to future generations. So I urge this committee to pass this resolution and kako'o the efforts of these farmers so that they may continue to malama aina and malama haloa. Mahalo nui to the farmers of Waioli, mahalo to Professor Kapua Sprout and the Environmental Clinic Haumana, mahalo to the state and county agencies and staff and countless others who have supported this collaborative endeavor throughout the years, and mahalo to this committee for the opportunity to testify on this measure.
Thank you. And speaking of Professor Sprout, the Waioli Valley Taro Hui is next in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, and honorable committee members. I'm Kapua Sprout, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Waioli Valley Taro Hui. I'm a professor at UH's William S. Richardson School of Law, the director of our Native Hawaiian Law Center, where I also co-teach our Native Hawaiian rights and environmental law clinics. And these are classes that are offered to second and third year law students, where we provide direct legal services to communities with the greatest needs. This semester, we're again working with the hui, and we're just thrilled to be able to kokua them. This is actually my fourth semester that my students, fellows, and I have been able to work with the farmers. Their situation is detailed in the hui's written testimony, as well as the testimonies of the individual farmers upon which we stand. The bottom line is that the hui is a collective of about a dozen small family farmers, many of whom are Native Hawaiian, with long-standing ties to Waioli. Most are third to fifth generation kalo farmers. Some were born on the farms that they now tend. And their lifeways were devastated by the 2018 floods that ravaged Kauai's North Shore. And disaster recovery efforts revealed that the farmers' Native Hawaiian irrigation system that has taken water from Waioli Stream for centuries was on conservation land and would now be subject to permitting and other requirements, including HRS 171, DLNR's water licensing provision. So over the last 2 years, the farmers, with the assistance of our clinics, have been working diligently to comply with 171's many requirements. Over the course of that time, 33 students and 4 attorneys have spent thousands of hours supporting the farmers in this endeavor. And my students playfully refer to the hui as our legal unicorn because their situation and status are unique and they warrant special treatment. Their use and stewardship of this area is ancient. Research documented this lo'i system to the 15th century, and we have a picture of their awai from over 100 years ago, exactly where it is today. The system has been in place before Hawaii was a state, before there was a conservation zone, before 171 existed. Their water use is also pono. It's in stream, in watershed, and non-polluting. So these are public trust purposes, and the farmers have appurtenant, riparian, and traditional and customary Native Hawaiian rights. But the bottom line is they just borrow a little water from the stream, run it through their lo'i, and it goes back to the stream. So I'm here today to ask you to please pass out these resolutions and allow the farmers to directly negotiate with DLNR after they've fulfilled all the necessary requirements. And we've worked closely with Ian. We hope to continue to work closely with them. I also just want to mention that the farmers met with Governor Ige when he came to Kauai 2 weeks ago, and he's acknowledged the challenges and expressed his support for this expedited process. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and mahalo for this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor. Members, we have a number of about 30 individuals writing in support. About 5 of them are here. First up, we have Sierra Lynn Stone in support.
Aloha, everyone, chair and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to be here to testify. My name is Sierra Lynn Stone. I reside on the island of Kauai, and I am a part of the Waioli Valley taro farmer hui. I am a 6th generation Wahine kalo farmer. And long story short, I have background through my grandfather who has been farming for generations in the Waioli area. And further into my high school career is when I, went off to college. And at that point, my grandfather's health deteriorated and the opportunity posed to come home and take over the farm. And so I did just that. And, farming for us is just more than just, the day-to-day means. It is a passion, it is a lifestyle, and it's a legacy. And so I'm just here today to ask of your support in strongly passing, the HR 139 and HCR 163. We've gone through many challenges and obstacles since 2018 with flooding. And so we've definitely come a long way. And collectively working together and with the clinic, it has been tremendous resilience with everyone's, kukua. And I'm just grateful. Thank you so much. And I just want to say mahalo to Vice Chair Matayoshi, Representatives Lopresti, McKelvey, Nakamura, and a special mahalo to Nadine for all of her aloha through this process as well. And just asking for your vote to approve these resolutions. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Joanne Kaona in support.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Joanne Kaona. Mahalo for this opportunity to testify in support of these resolutions. I help my dad, Clarence Shorty Kaona, to farm kalo in Waioli Valley. And I'm also the secretary in the Waioli Valley Taro Hui. And I also work at the Waipa Foundation, where I get to work with the kids and where we make poi every Thursday. We utilize community volunteers with the ultimate goal of keeping poi affordable and just on as many tables across the island as possible. It's even available to kupuna at low to no cost. And Waipa gets a lot of its kalo from Waioli Valley farmers, including my dad and I. For us, farming defines our ohana. I'm the 4th generation within my family, and it's how we contribute to our community. We were hit hard by the 2018 floods. It's been a long road to recovery, both dealing with the physical damage to our farms and the stress of having to comply with all these new legal requirements. There's even severe flooding that it even flooded today. And there was a landslide the other week that cut off access to some of the farmers like my dad, who lives in Anahola and drives to Waioli daily. Luckily, it was only a week, but for that week, I was pretty concerned about him and how he's 85 years old, so he moved back to Kauai a long time ago. About 40 years ago, he's been going to the farm every single day. And I think that kind of dedication is how farmers like my dad and the rest of the farmers in the Hui have developed this love and connection for Waioli and the incredible skills of managing the natural resources that they're dependent upon, water being the most important one. And we don't consume water like regular ag users. We just take it from the stream. It flows through our loi and returns into the stream. And given the realities of Kauai's North Shore, our small Huia farmers doesn't stand a chance if we're up against in a public auction for water use. For the people moving to the North Shore who want to use water for whatever they want to use water for. But the ability to directly negotiate a long-term water lease with BLNR will bring our Hui one step closer to upholding our mission to continue feeding our community and just to pass down this tradition of kalo farming to future generations. Mahalo to all the chairs and all the representatives, especially Nadine, for always looking out for us. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next up, we have Chris Kobayashi in support.
Aloha, representatives. Mahalo for the opportunity to be here with you. My name is Chris Kobayashi. I grow kalo in Waioli and also am a member of Waioli Valley Taro Hui. I'm a 3rd generation farmer, and for me and so many others in our Hui, this is not a job. It is really a way of life, a commitment, and a kuleana that we practice. 2018 floods, as you know, really set us back, damaged our farms and equipment and our kalo fields and our native Hawaiian irrigation system. But just recently in February and again this month, we had major rain events, raining again today, and it breached our Auwai. Not today, I don't think, but anyway, breached our Auwai and fully submerged and flooded our loi. And there was no water coming down after ROI, after the runoff disappeared. So what happens is after every big rain and flooding event, we have to respond immediately and go up and assess the damages and fix what we can to get the water flowing again. So in the next few months, I believe everyone who loves Kalo and Poi will see the effects of the flooding. And in Waioli, as elsewhere, we all know that our climate is changing to bigger and more frequent flooding or rain events. So after 3 to 5 generations that our families of Kalo farmers have maintained the whole water system, we were told that because the Mano, our diversion from Waioli Stream, was in the conservation zone, we had to obtain exemptions, permits, rights of entry, a lease, and research and write big studies, coordinate with the county, state, and other agencies, as well as fly to Oahu and testify at the legislature and BLNR. We are just simply farmers and just want to grow kalo, but now we are realizing to farm, you also need to be a lawyer and have other skills to do all these enormous amounts of work that takes time away from our farming. So we have been extremely fortunate and beyond grateful to have the help of Kapua Sproat, her team of lawyers and her clinicians to help us navigate this process, because it's nothing that we could have done on our own. We had no expertise. It has been an exhaustive amount of work. So we appreciate them so much. But now we also want to ask you for your help, representatives, to please vote.
2 minutes, if you could conclude your testimony, please.
Please vote to allow our hui to directly negotiate with BLNR. I'll finish up with one more thing. I just want to say that I don't want to see this water system or culture of growing kalo be abandoned now or in the future, just because farmers have no funds and no time for all this legal stuff, because we are carrying on this tradition, this legacy that has been going on in Waioli Valley for hundreds of years, and we want to see it continue. So mahalo nui. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, we have Hoku-chan in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Matsuyoshi, Chair Nakashima, and committee members. My name is Hoku Chun. I'm a third-year law student at the William S. Richardson School of Law and a student in the Native Hawaiian Rights Clinic. For the past semester, it's been my privilege to work with the farmers of the Waioli Valley Taro Hui. There's many other farmers who wish that they could be here to testify in person, but because of the recent heavy rains and ongoing recovery efforts, they are behind and must tend to their lo'i. I ask that you please read and consider their heartfelt written testimonies which tell their stories. I personally came to law school because I wanted to learn how to use and shape the law to strengthen our communities rather than work against our people. The opportunity to kokua the Waioli farmers has taught me that this is possible. It has been one of the most meaningful and impactful experiences of my law school career. These farmers are pillars in their community. Not only do they provide aipono for their extended ohana, but they also perpetuate the longstanding tradition and practice of kalo farming. Without practitioners, Hawaiian culture will not persevere. So today, Vice Chair Matsuyoshi, Chair Nakashima, and honorable committee members, with immense respect and gratitude for the farmers of Waioli, I humbly ask that you pass these resolutions and do so not just for this hui of farmers, but for the people of Hawaii as a whole. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you. Lastly, we have Uilani Tanigawa Lam in support.
Aloha mai, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matsuyoshi, and members of this committee. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Uilani Tanigawa Lam, and I'm a post-JD Fellow at Kahuliau's Center for Excellence in Native Hawaiian Law. This semester, I am co-teaching the Native Hawaiian Rights Clinic with Professor Sproat, and I'd like to be mindful of your time and just quickly share a few things in support of these wonderful farmers and these resolutions. I first worked with the hui as a third-year law student in 2019, and I have been working with them since. And as a hula practitioner and now an attorney, I'm also passionate about Native Hawaiian practices like kalo farming. I'd like to point out that this hui of small family farmers is an incredible resource of Aina stewards and are humbly working to continue this practice in Waioli. Given their unique situation, being in-stream, in watershed, and non-polluting, I'd ask that you please pass these resolutions. Mahalo nui.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers we have today. Members, any questions? Rep. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. For either Chris or Sierra Lynn or Joanne, I have a marketing question about the supply of Gerald. Before I say that, let me thank every one of you who are farmers and those who in the law school are helping the farmers. It's a tough lifestyle and one that I take my hat off for. The question I have is, what is the local supply chain versus what the import, which I understand used to be Fiji? What's the amount of poi actually that is being produced locally versus being imported? Does anyone know who is in the particular business, what those numbers might be, or estimates?
This is Chris.
Yes, Chris, please proceed.
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if the Department of Agriculture has any statistics, but there was a time when we tried to get that information, but we were told that because of Homeland Security being in charge of things that were coming in, that supposedly we don't have a handle on what those numbers are. But you could probably ask some of the specific big millers, they might disclose that.
So when I was on the Ag Committee, it was actually importing more than we were making, which is to say it's encouraging. If you're farming, the market should be there, that anything you produce should be able to be purchased. At least that's the understanding, unless someone has something different.
Members, any other questions? If not, let's move on to HCR 189, HD1, HR 158, HD1, expressing support for and urging the international and domestic repatriation of Native Hawaiian art, cultural items, and iwi kupuna. First up, we have DLNR in support. Oops, I'm sorry. That is not it. Looks like we don't have any testifiers for this. So we'll move on to HR 10. No, I'm sorry. We have no testifiers for the HCR. What's going on here?
Sure, I have OHA.
I'm sorry, members. My mistake. This is for the HR for the same Tarahui resolution. I know a number of these people have already testified, though. I believe the Lenar has testified, OHA, Professor Sproat. Let me make sure there's no one who hasn't testified that's on here. No, it looks like everyone's testified. So moving on to HCR 189, HD1, HR 158, HD1. We have one testifier, the Kawai Hapai Ohana, Thomas Shirai Jr. Thomas, you still there?
Yes, Chair. I stand on my testimony of support, and that's all I can say.
Good, thank you. We do have other OHA and some other individuals writing in support of this resolution as well. Members, any questions? If not, we'll move on to HR 105 HD1, designating the first full week of May as Tardive Dyskinesia Awareness Week.
Okay.
We do have one person sitting in support, but we do not have anyone here to testify. So moving on to the last item of the agenda, HCR 58 HD1, HR 47 HD1, urging the United States Congress and President of the United States to enact the Protecting the Right to Organize Act as Act of 2021 as expeditiously as possible. First up to testify, we have Lorna Wu in support.
Aloha Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. Lorna Wu On behalf of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 50, I stand on our written testimony in strong support of these PRO-ACT resolutions, but please allow me to make a few comments. The federal PRO-ACT legislation, once enacted, would provide workers an opportunity to organize and form a union that would collectively bargain on their behalf, provide better benefits, ensure safe working conditions, and raise the standard of living for working class Americans. Thank you so much for scheduling these resos, and I humbly request their passage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have LGBT Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. Okay, not present. Next up, we have UPW in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, and members of the committee, Dan Kochi with UPW Hawaii. As Lorna mentioned, we also stand in strong support on these resolutions. Thank you to the committee for considering them. And we'd also like to just thank our 4 congressional delegation members in DC for all sponsoring this bill. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. We also have a number of unions in support and 1 organization in opposition. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will recess for decision making. Recess. Convening the Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. First up, we'll be voting on HCR 8, HD1, HR 9, HD1. Vice Chair's recommendation is to add a provision directing the DOE to also examine available existing training program resources for the proposed Hawaiian language and cultural training. And we will also be listing some of these resources, non-exhaustive list, in the committee report to help that as well. Members, any questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Oh, the motion.
True chair.
HCR 8, HR 9, urging the Board of Education, Department of Education to elevate Hawaiian language and cultural education in public schools by expanding access to Hawaiian language and cultural classes that fulfill core requirements throughout the secondary education. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ichiyama. Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Lopresti. Excused. Representative Lowen.
Aye.
Representative McKelvey. Aye. Representative Nakamura. Excused. Representative Takumi.
Aye.
Representative Todd.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Aye.
Representative Ward.
Aye.
Chair, your measure passes.
Okay, thank you, members. Next up, we have HCR 11 HD1, HR 12 HD1, requesting the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women to convene a task force to study missing and murdered Native Hawaiian women and girls. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any questions or comments? Okay. Chair, as is.
Okay, HCR 11, HR 12. Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. So the excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Are there any no's or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have HCR 12 HD1, HR 13 HD1, convening a task force to address implementation of Hawaii's state law corollary to Title IX to strengthen Hawaii's efforts to end campus-based sexual violence and gender discrimination. Members, I've spoken with the previous chair and expressed to her my concerns that the changes to these resolutions make them internally conflict. Originally, the resolution was to have the 2018 corollary reconcile with the 2020 changes by the Trump administration, with the understanding that the Biden administration may be rolling back those changes. This resolution has since also changed to add a provision to try to end sexual violence and gender-based discrimination, which I feel is may honestly come into conflict with Trump's changes. So we're having a task force do two different things that may conflict with each other. Vice Chair's recommendation right now is to defer this matter, although in light of the Senate passing a fairly similar resolution that we will be hearing at a later time as well. So we will be deferring this measure indefinitely. Next up, we have HCR 35, HR 28, strongly urging the United States military to clean up munitions and explosives of concern in Hawaii under the Military Munitions Response Program. Chair's recommendation is to pass this matter as is. Members, any comments? If not, Chair, as is.
HCR 35, HR 28. Chair's recommendations to move it as is. No excuse absences of Representative Nakamura and Lopresti. Are there any no's or reservations? Chair, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have HCR 37, HR 30, requesting the Department of Transportation and Kauai Department of Public Works to conduct a study to identify and recommend methods to alleviate traffic congestion at certain intersections along the Kaumuali'i Highway. Vice Chair's recommendation is to adopt the DOT's proposed amendment to change the date of the report from 2022 to 2023 to give DOT sufficient time to write the report. Members, any comments? If not, Chair, as amended.
Okay. HR 37, HCR 37, HR 30, regarding the Department of Transportation. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. No excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Are there any noes or reservations? Chair, motion is adopted.
Thank you. Next up, we have HCR 66, reviewing and approving the action taken by the Board of Land and Natural Resources on a land exchange between the State of Hawaii and Parker Ranch Incorporated. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? Seeing none, Chair, as is.
HCR 66, Chair's recommendation is to pass unamended. Knowing excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Are there any noes or reservations? Motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Next up, we have HCR 69, HD1, HR 58, HD1, requesting the Department of Land and Natural Resources to submit a petition to list the pueo as a threatened or endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. Despite the comments of Dean Comerford of CTAR, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, given the importance of this matter, just to elevate it and give it some attention. Members, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Chair, as is.
HCR 69, HR 58. Chair's recommendation is to pass unamended. Knowing excused absence of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Any noes or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HCR 96, urging the Department of Facility Maintenance of the City and County of Honolulu, in conjunction with the United States Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environmental Services of the City and County of Honolulu, to immediately and regularly clean the drainage canals and streams in Kaneohe and Kailua, and develop recommended cleaning schedules for drainage canals and streams. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments?
They could expand it to Maui too.
Do your own resolution. What's going on
There's
here?
a lot of streams that you see by the last storm that could use some cleaning.
Streams could use it.
Maybe a committee report for the Senate.
I'll look for your resolution next year. Any other comments?
Chair, same request, except for East Honolulu, Aina Haina to Hawaii, same problem, same blockages of trash in the streets and the bridges particularly.
No, this is certainly a widespread problem through a lot of our communities, I think, and I think it's going to be getting a lot more attention given the recent rains and flooding too.
So kudos to the author and the provocation to jealousy for the rest of us.
Thank you, Rep. Board. Any other comments? If not, Chair recommendation is to pass as is.
Okay. What resolutions were those?
This is, oh, I'm sorry.
HCR 95.
95.
We skipped 95. Let's do.
So
That's the one that I like.
My fault here.
HCR.
We'll come back. Why don't we do HCR 96 and then we'll come back?
Okay.
My fault. There's a lot of writing on here and I missed one.
Okay, and that was unamended? Or with
Unamended.
amendments? With amendments.
As is.
As is. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, HCR 96, Chair's recommendations pass unamended. Knowing the excused absence of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Any noes or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Sorry, members, short recess. Sure. emergency flights over residential neighborhoods. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? Okay, seeing none, Chair, recommendation is as is.
Okay, HCR 95, Chair's recommendation is passed unamended, noting the excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Any noes or reservations? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next up, we have HCR 112, HR 90, declaring racism as a public health crisis. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? Rep. Ward.
Chair, I agree with everything that the resol says. The only thing is the title elevates it to a public health crisis, which I think is a little bit of an overstatement. For that reason, I think it's more inciting rather than calming. And this is Hawaii. If you want to apply it to parts of the mainland, I would totally agree. But I think for now, I think with reservations, given that it's a public health crisis, which is a different kind of a connotation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other comments? Okay, if not, recommendation is to pass as is.
Okay, HCR 12, HR 90, recommendations to pass as is, noting the excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, your motion. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not as swift as Vice Chair.
Oh, it's because you didn't do your walk around, Chair.
I'm sorry, Representative Bostella.
Yeah, with reservation.
Reservations? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other noes or reservations? Okay, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have HCR 129, HR 111, convening a working group to discuss the future development plans in Kakaako Makai. We have some recommendations, recommended amendments to change the OHA CEO to the OHA chair, just a kind of a wording change. We're going to be adding one additional member from both the House and the Senate to the working group. We are deleting the representative from Kakaako Makai Community Planning Advisory Council, and we are adding a provision, a fairly standard one, to allow the working group to choose their own chair. Members, any comments?
Did I hear correctly in the testimony, OHA said they will not participate in this?
OHA is claiming that they will not participate in this if the task force is convened, yes.
Chair, also a comment about OHA.
Yes, Rep. Ward.
Unless their good representative is not finished, if he is. OHA said the understanding, the agreement was with the evaluation, which is in writing, which hopefully, Chair, you will be getting a copy of, which you will send to all of us, was that there would be a 400-foot height. Is this a bait and switch, or is that something in writing that we don't know about until we see it? So until then, I'm going to be a no vote, because if that was the agreement, and I know I voted for it back in 2012 or something like that, that this is unfair. So no until further notice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we'll add it to the committee report, your concerns about the 400-foot height limit.
Yes, she said she was going to send the actual evaluation when that was the basis for the $200 million repayment.
Okay. Members, any other comments? Okay, if not, Chair, the recommendation is as amended.
Okay, HCR 129, HR 111, recommendations to pass with amendments, noticing the absence of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura and the no vote of Representative Ward. Are there any other noes or reservations? You see none, motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. For HCR 131 HD1, we have a number of amendments that we're trying to make, and we're still working with the departments. We're just going to be deferring this one day to the decision-making one day till 2 p.m., the end of the 2 p.m. agenda tomorrow, March 30th, here in room 325. Moving on to HCR 132 HD1, HR 112 HD1, requesting the Department of Health to submit a request to the Drug Enforcement Administration for an exception to regulations and a petition to initiate proceedings for federal rulemaking to clarify that the state authorized use of medical cannabis does not violate the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments?
Chair.
Report.
I'm still confused on the wording that it may imply in one of the phrases that recreational marijuana is also going to be taken out of that schedule. So until I get that clarification with reservations, please.
Okay.
Because of that, I'm strong support.
Strong support by Rep. McKelvey. Any other comments? If not, Chair, as is.
HCR 132, HR 112, recommendations to pass unamended. During excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura, and the reservations of Representative Ward. Are there any other no's or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 135, HR 115, recognizing Makai Kilikai's birthday of October 15th as Royal Hawaiian Troubadours Day. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? If not, Chair, as is.
HCR 135, HR 115, recommendations to pass unamended. During the excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura, are there any other no's or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Yeah, thank you, members. Moving on to HCR 163, HD1, HR 139, HD1, requesting the Board of Land and Natural Resources to enter into a long-term water lease with the Waioli Valley Tarahui for the Hui's existing use of water from the Waioli stream via direct negotiation upon completion of the requirements of Chapter 343 Hawaii Revised Statutes. Chair just wants to comment that this is a fantastic agricultural project and initiative, and hopes to see more of these throughout our state. Members, any comments? Okay, seeing none, Chair, recommendation is to pass as is.
Okay, HCR 163, HR 139, Chair's recommendation is to pass unamended. During excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura, are there any no's or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Next up, HCR 189, HD1, HR 158, HD1, expressing support for and urging the international and domestic repatriation of Native Hawaiian art, cultural items, and iwi kupuna. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? If not, Chair, as is.
Okay, HCR 189, it's HR 158, recommendations to pass unamended. During the excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura, are there any no's or reservations? Okay, motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up, we have HR 105, HD1, designating the first full week of May as Tardive Dyskinesia Awareness Week. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? Okay, seeing none, as is.
Okay, HCR 105, recommendation is to pass unamended. During the excused absences of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura, any no's or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. And last up, we have HCR 58, HD1, HR 47, HD1, urging the United States Congress and President of the United States to enact the Protecting the Right to Organize Act of 2021 as expeditiously as possible. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any comments? Okay, seeing none, as is.
HCR 58, HR 47, recommendations to pass unamended. Knowing excused absence of Representative Lopresti and Nakamura, are there any no's or reservations? Seeing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. We are adjourned.